Welcome to this short seminar on the topic of how to write a good research paper. I have based this on a blog article from a major publisher of research papers so that we get the viewpoint of the people who read and decide whether to accept our papers for publishing. So when we want to get a research paper published, it is very important to pay attention to the topic. So our research article's topic should be very specific and accurate. And of course this guidance goes to other subtitles also. And why is this very important? Because most of the time the readership of the paper is decided by the title. Mostly the search engines, the archival systems keep records of papers based on the title. And most of the time when we do a search, what is shown to us is the title of a paper and maybe a couple of lines from the abstract. So title is the part of the paper that gets highlighted and what people read as the first thing. So so this first impression is very important. So therefore we have to be careful in deciding on this title, as well as we should not make it offensive. For example, we should not use a title which would out of hand consider or out of hand label a particular topic, particular technology and a particular methodology as not useful. For example, if we say object, if we have a title, for example, that says object-oriented programming is bad, that may be true, but that is not a that's a title we should try to avoid. And also it should be specific and should guide the reader as to what kind of audience the author has intended. So if we say, for example, object-oriented programming to improve the resilience of embedded control systems, then that is more focused. The readers will understand this is about systems that are requiring high reliability, high availability, better security, and developing such systems, developing such software systems using an OOP approach. And of course the title should be accurate to the extent of what is being presented in the paper, and must have very close match. And also it's very important to avoid jargon and acronyms in titles. Of course, when it comes to acronyms, there are certain acronyms that are no longer considered as acronyms. For example, Wi-Fi, the expanded phrase wireless fidelity, nobody uses and most people don't understand. So that type of acronyms are acceptable, but otherwise we should avoid such acronyms. And this guidance for the titles are therefore other parts of the paper which provide us with the structure, especially the sections and subsection titles, as well as tables and figure captions. And these titles should be specific again. Of course, we have the general outline of a paper, the introduction, literature review, methodology, experiments, and then the results analysis, conclusion. So those are generic titles, and of course the content in those sections should be reflective of that title. But it is the second level title, the subtitles, which are very important, as they would guide the reader as to what exactly is being contained there. If we take software technology, now if a researcher is working on evaluating the effectiveness of a particular software development methodology, maybe agile methodology. So in the literature review, there must be a section on the evolution of the agile methodology. So that should give a bit of history and the major milestones of the evolution of the agile methodology. And then it should provide a overview of the current state of the art in agile methodologies. So there are several key agile approaches for software development, and those must be now briefly reviewed and summarized. And finally, maybe we need to look at the key issues of the agile approach. For example, agile approach does not generate extensive documentation. So when it comes to developing highly reliable systems, that is a negative aspect. And also agile systems tend to provide a working model fairly quickly. That is a positive thing. So like that, you'll have to structure the particular section and give meaningful subtitles or section titles to indicate what the content is focused on. So this would help the readers to skip over things that they are not interested in and go straight to the parts that they have an interest in. And the abstract is the first part of the paper that everyone reads and gets into the archival systems records. So this is where we can persuade people to read our paper. Okay. So why is it important? Because the value of our paper, as well as the utility of what we have done, the usefulness of what we have done to other people, that is utility, is based on people reading the paper, and especially if they also cite our paper as prior work of importance, of usefulness. So for all that to happen, first of all, we have to get people to read the paper. So a very clear abstract would be quite helpful in this. And in this abstract, what we have to do is to convince the reader how important our work is. For that purpose, if we can convince the reader that our work is maybe state of the art, or is a new direction of significance, like that, that would be quite advantageous to us. So therefore we should strive to place the work we have done in comparison to the current state of the art. And so this is really helpful if we refer to some notable achievement that has been in the news recently or has been has been a seminal piece of work that has been there for a while, and if we indicate how we have built on top of that, how we have improved on that, how we have made progress from that point onwards. So that is the idea of abstract. So we generally tend to have the idea that abstract is a kind of summary of our paper. That is true, but the abstract should be written in such a way that it would be a key element for the promotion of our work. So just indicating a summary of the work is not adequate. So as I mentioned about referring to the state of the art, so it is important to have a good understanding about the state of the art. So this, of course, you will gain when you do the literature review, which we'll talk about in a minute. The abstract is a good place to briefly introduce the methodology that we have followed, either an existing methodology or a new methodology or a adaptation or modification of an existing methodology, because in many instances other researchers, other readers of our papers are interested in the methodology we have followed. For example, if you want to see the effectiveness of agile methodology in software development, one approach would be to do it quantitatively. So for that you have to collect data, for example, on software that have been developed using agile approaches. You collect data on the number of change requests that come, number of bug fixes that are done, and the amount of time and effort in the maintenance of software. So those are all quantifiable items that you collect as data, and then you can do a quantitative analysis. Another approach would be to use a qualitative approach where you would interview people and use survey instruments to collect data on the software development process and its effect on the developers, on the teams and the knowledge transfer aspects, and the software maintenance, how it affects or improves software maintenance. These things, these are other type of data that you can collect. The methodology you have followed, whether it is qualitative, whether it's quantitative, or whether it's a mixed model, is very important for the readers to know, because then they will be able to figure out whether it is in the area, type of research that interests them. Another important part of our research papers is the keywords. Now, keywords are used to index the paper so that when we search for papers, these keywords are used to determine whether this particular paper is relevant to the current search. So therefore, we should use a good set of keywords, and we have to make sure that we do not use as keywords that appear in the conference title or the journal paper title or like that, because suppose we have an international conference on software engineering and we write a paper in the area of software engineering, it wouldn't make sense to put software engineering as a keyword. And also we should try to be precise. So rather than saying, for example, agile software development, we should look for a particular aspect of agility and use that as a keyword. So I'm giving an example from software development because our track focus on software technology, multimedia and networking at the software layers of these technology streams. And in writing a good research paper, one of the key things is the novelty. In fact, in every research paper evaluation criteria, you have a significant amount of marks allocated for the novelty of the paper. So we have to understand novelty does not necessarily mean it is something entirely new. It could be a new interpretation of an existing technology, method, or a system, or a new adaptation of an existing system. Things like it can be like that. So we have to find this we have to find whether our work has such novelty. So how can we do that? We can use a search engine like the Google Scholar, which allows you to conduct a comprehensive search. So two things happen here. One is this will help you to build up your background knowledge and the background literature review that you need to complete, as well as place your work among the related area. So, so we have to be careful in deciding on this. Now, if you look at what happens nowadays in the area of machine learning, okay, there's a huge number of papers being produced every day in this area of machine learning. And most of the time what you see is a very numerically insignificant improvements. So the accuracy improves from 86% to 86.5%, like that. But that is considered a major improvement in the domain now, because improvements have been stagnating for a long time at 86%. So if you can improve it even by 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, like that small number, that's a significant achievement, because no improvements have been possible for a long time. And the novelty of what you are doing, or what you have done, is in the context in which you are explaining it. Otherwise, if it is, for example, image recognition, and the underlying concepts of image recognition through machine learning is not new. So what is new here is a particular technique that has been employed to slightly improve the accuracy. So we have to have some kind of novelty in our work. Sometimes the novelty comes from the fact that we have not looked at a particular area previously. This I see in things like natural language processing. So there's a whole host of research occurring in the domain of what we call low resource languages. For example, Sinhala or Tamil to a certain extent. These are considered low resource languages because much of the natural language processing, NLP work, has been done for English and for some other language like French. But mainly it is for English, so the various data sets, corpuses that are available, which tells how a word breaks, and then these other bag of words type constructs. They are all available for these, like English. So if you try to do research on NLP in other native language, which is a low resource language, that is new work. So there you will use the same model, and but you will have only a much smaller database to train the model. So then you look at techniques such as transfer learning to see how a model that has been trained on, for example, recognizing words from a different language can use the same approach for another language. So that would be the novelty. So you have to figure out what is the novelty part in your research and highlight that. So as we were talking about the state of the art and what others have done, it is very important that you properly cite such work in your paper. So this supports two requirements. One is it provides context for your work, because you are citing others' work and saying this is what has happened, and this is the area that I am focusing on, this is the kind of work that has happened in that area, and this is the problem that I am looking at. So all of that has to be supported by what others have done. So it is very unlikely nowadays we can do research where no one else has worked before. That's very unlikely. So we will have a considerable body of knowledge of what others have done, and we have to properly bring that work as a kind of picture into our paper and show where our work stand. This would allow us to highlight the novelty in our work. Always it is interesting to read and to review work where the results are unexpected. Okay? For example, now we use Python as a programming language now to teach. It is a language that is used as an introductory programming language now. It would be interesting to actually do a research and find out how effective that is how effective that is for students to learn about data structures and algorithms and have a good understanding of those concepts. So on one hand, we have this Python-like language which get you up to speed on programming very fast. But at the same time, they may not provide the necessary background information that the student need to appreciate the role of data structures and algorithms. That kind of work you can do then for students who are studying computer science, information technology, or non-IT students who are taking such a course, and then do research on the effectiveness of such a language. So that would be an interesting, depending on the outcome, it could be an interesting finding. So there are that type of research one could do, which will have quite a significant impact on how the research is used. For example, if it is proven that using Python as a first programming language for students in CS, in computer science, and that it is detrimental to their core understanding of the role of data structures, that could lead us to change that approach. Now, in writing a research paper, key element of a research paper is the research question. So now if you are writing a research paper for a conference, ideally it should be a single question. And we have to state the question with an adequate amount of evidence that can be used for us to move towards an answer. So if our research question is the impact of Python programming language on the core understanding of core computer science concepts by undergraduate students, then so that is our question. It's a single question. We are trying to see the impact of using Python as a programming language, as a starting programming language. We should have adequate evidence. So, in the sense of that we have done this for a university undergraduate cohort. So it can't be like that. We have just arbitrarily picked few people and evaluated. We picked few people who have studied Python as their first programming language, and then now we are checking their knowledge on data structures and algorithms. That would not be a adequate evidence base. Okay, so we have to do this for a full cohort of students, maybe several of them, several intakes over a period of time to make a meaningful assessment. So that must be also part of your research question. So your research question should be given in the proper context. And ultimately we have to give an answer. So it is good to actually formulate that answer also as part of the paper writing. Because when you are writing the paper, of course, you have already done the research, you have the answer. So similar to what we want to do with the question, we want to make it a simple, straightforward, single question. We should have the answer also in a similar manner. Now, when you're writing these research articles, it's essentially a critical argument. So we can view it as such, our paper. So we pose a problem, we have a problem, we state what our problem is, and we pose a question. That is our research question. And then we build up evidence towards a solution. Okay, and this is how we build up this evidence towards solution is our methodology. Of course, between stating the problem and posing the research question and the methodology, we have the literature review where we look at how others have approached this problem, what they have accomplished, how far they have gone towards a solution, and how their solutions differ from each other, and how our problem differs from the problems they have tackled. So like that, we build up a platform on which we are now going to work towards solution. And how we present this evidence is the key part of our methodology that we provide in the methodology section. And in the experimentation and testing that follows, where we may do data collection, and then the processing of such data to gain insights to how things work. What we essentially do is we look at this evidence we have collected and review the strength of our evidence or the weakness, okay, as well as how it compares to other evidence. Okay. So, so these are all then kind of arguments. So our question itself is an argument in that we pose it as a question that is important enough to be answered or studied and answered. So therefore we have to have critical arguments that strengthen our position that this is a valid, valuable, useful question to answer. And then our methodology, again, we have to validate it through critical review, saying this is the proper way to collect, evaluate, and present the evidence. And finally, thereafter, we can give our conclusions based on the results that we have gained. So, as I mentioned, this methodology, which is a key element of our research, is based on the prior work. Now, this prior work, we gain a thorough knowledge of the prior work through a comprehensive literature survey. And how to do this search, this literature search, is a key issue. When we do a search for the literature, it should have high sensitivity, but at the same time low specificity. In that, it should have high sensitivity, so we can narrow down to the key elements that we are trying to study. Okay. So when you do that, you may have to use keywords that are increasingly narrowly focused. So that's how you can achieve high sensitivity. But at the same time, when you try to do that, there is a very high probability of missing out on key research work in that domain, because you have been very specific with your keywords. So therefore, we have to have low specificity also. That means we will have to use keywords with a broader meaning, or broadly used keywords also, to ensure that we have a wide enough coverage. So these are the issues actually that we face when we do a literature survey, and need to keep that in mind. So doing a literature survey which is having a very high sensitivity only is not appropriate. Similarly, if you do it with a low specificity, then it will show up in your literature review that you have not really gained a good understanding about some of the key findings that have been obtained by prior research work. And then moving towards the end, we want our research to be novel, and most of the time we work in research domains where others have worked previously. So, so we will try to find some novelty in the research results that we present. But also they have to be significant. Now, so that's why I mentioned about that machine learning type area where minor improvements in performance is also considered significant. Now, if you take our software domain, there's a lot of research currently happening in the area of automated program repair. So the software development is now mainly done through a kind of amalgamation of library code. So nobody is really writing a full code base for a given application. You call up a large number of library routines from a large set of software libraries. They themselves will be using another set of libraries, so that have been developed over a long time. So this leads to a final product where the software quality is not determinable. We cannot determine the quality because the depth of inheritance, kind of, not inheritance, but depth at which these libraries have been developed, a particular library using another library, that library using another library, like that. So the source code origins, the quality control measures they have used, documentation standards they have followed, all of that is mainly unknown now. So when you build a piece of software, its quality is rather questionable. So this leads to a lot of issues when the software is deployed. That is why we see so many patches being released for software so very often. In fact, now patch update to a software is part of the software. So software is now designed, so when a patch is released, it can be automatically applied and the code repaired. So now this automatic repairing of code can be done in that manner when you detect a bug, then a bug report comes, you run your test, and then you locate the bug, and then you send a patch update. Patch update is basically a bug fix. But at the same time, if you want to develop software for domains which require high assurance, for example, control systems of critical infrastructure, and medical instruments, things, and manufacturing plant control systems like that, then you cannot wait until a fault occurs and a failure results in a request for a bug fix. That would be quite damaging. So you have to run software continuously with various similar input and then detect errors and fix them. So this is a major area of research now because of the way we actually develop software for the customer end. One of the things that happen nowadays is fuzzing, because we normally test software for known data, border cases, and then extreme cases like that. So we have these different types of input data. But in fuzzing, it is just random data that is generated and input to a system until the system crashes. And when the system crashes, they take a dump of the crash, the memory dump, and then analyze it to see what was the cause of the crash, and then try to figure out what led to that. So this area of research is no longer novel. It has had maybe about 20 years of development now, thorough development. It is older than that, but a lot of interest has been there in the past couple of decades. But we still see significant improvements happening. For example, now once you detect an error, how best to fix it is a key question to answer. Because when you fix that error, it could lead to the discovery of other errors, because it could trigger the activation of other errors. So there are significant issues that you can address even in areas that no longer we can consider as novel. Okay? And by reading on the prior work, you can actually see whether such questions have been answered and to what extent they have answered and how successful they have been. And if you have done work in that area, then you can place your work correctly to be interesting and exciting for the readers. Now, this is a key element of a good research paper, to keep it simple. Because when we write papers, sometimes, after a while, we also tend to get confused as to what we are trying to present. We have so much of ideas that we need to present, and what is the correct order in which they need to be given, how much of importance we have to give to different aspects of the paper, because not everything is of the same level of importance. So these are key issues that we encounter when writing a paper. So keeping a paper simple to read, so we generally have understanding that there are some papers which are simpler to read, easy to understand, and given like a story. Okay, so such papers have very high level of acceptance. And of course, using English that is to read. And we should try as much as possible to avoid giving information that is not necessary. But of course, at the same time, to ensure that we give critical information without missing them. For example, sometimes we say give information on the performance. Okay, so we might compare two algorithms. We do that most of the time in computer vision area. So we, for example, let's say that we have two algorithms for edge detection. So now we run these two and say that one has better performance. But if you are saying that, we should give a good understanding of the kind of platforms and software stacks and the hardware we have used to run these tests. Because certain algorithms run better when there is a larger, for example, a cache. And some algorithms run better when they are able to do multi-threading. So, so running a test on a single platform may not be correct or fair. So, so therefore, it is very important not to miss important information also. Because sometimes we are only interested in the performance figure, how well or how badly one or the other performed in terms of, say, computational speed or rendering. But it's also important to say, give details about the underlying platforms on which the performance tests were done. And when you write papers, after writing, you should definitely read it and review what you have written. And if you have a feeling that this content is not necessary, then definitely it is not necessary. Because sometimes we think, although I think it is not necessary, the readers might find it interesting and necessary. That is never the case. If you don't find it interesting and not necessary, then there's little chance the other readers will find it important. And when you are writing papers, one successful technique is to use the template of your targeted conference or journal or the particular venue from the very beginning. Because especially well-known conferences and other publications have a template developed over a period of time that suits them very well, and they give details as to how the papers should be structured. For example, some conferences require that at the very outset you give your results. The first section is the contributions of this paper. So that's how they wish to have the paper structured. And the related work is at the very end. So I have seen this in area of cryptography. There are many well-known conferences where you give that the main contribution at the beginning and the related work at the very end, which is kind of the reverse of the conventional structure, where you have the literature review, the related work at the early part, and the contributions listed at the end. So pay attention to that and use that template from the very beginning. And also, templates assist you in other type of structuring. For example, how to use tables and figures. Most of the time, it is good. Actually, a paper gets rated very high if you use these artifacts like a figure or a table or a graph to make clear your argument. Okay? Especially if you take the methodology section, it would be very well presented using a figure. And if you take your results, they can be very well presented using graphs which show relative performance or relative values of the results. And when you use a template which give all of these guidance, they would provide you with the necessary tips and techniques to make it look professional. So the paper's appearance is very important, and the template guides you with the formatting standard. So when you are writing a research paper, there is always this standard advice. Write the methods and results first, because you have done your research and everything is available to you. So write your methods and results first, and then go and write the abstract, and then the introduction and the conclusion later. So if you think of a typical structure of a paper which has the introduction, related work or the literature review, methodology, the results section, and the conclusion, like 5 sections. So we are starting with section 3 here, methodology, and then writing section 4, results, and then going all the way back to the abstract, and then writing section 1 and the section 5. So section 2, of course, is mostly available to you already, because while you are doing the research, you would be reading papers and summarizing them. So in a normal research process, the literature review would be available to you by the time you start writing your paper, because in your notebook, you would have these summaries of the papers you have read and how you have used it for your research work. However, this does not mean that this is a single iteration work. Paper writing is an iterative process. So once you make the first draft, then only you realize the deficiencies and areas where you can improve, and whatever other missing parts are there. So be ready for that also. Okay, so when you are writing a paper, don't try to make it perfect the first time. Okay, so it is important to get a first draft and then improve it. So we should get ready for multiple drafts. until we get the final paper. So that is why it is noted that the introduction and conclusion refinement can be kept to later, which means that initially it could be a very rough introduction and a conclusion. But as we keep on improving our methodology section and results section, where we have more focus, those introduction and conclusion can be again reviewed and revised. So to get started on writing the paper, therefore what we need is an outline. Okay? And so this outline will have those sections like the introduction, literature review, methodology, experimentation, conclusion, and very early on include your figures and tables and graphs into the paper and make your writing around that, because when most of the time your results are available as graphs or figures, and when you explain that, it builds up that section. Similar to that is the methodology. Usually it is available as couple of figures. So when you explain that, then your methodology section gets built up. So the rough outline with these figures, graphs and tables included will speed up your paper writing process. So couple of things, when you write the introduction, the objective of the introduction is to get the audience interested to read further. So especially the first paragraph should be kind of a thought-provoking content that gets people interested to read rest of the paper. And it should be written for the target audience. So in a conference, for that particular conference, and specifically if we are in a multi-track conference for the particular track we are targeting, the writing should be focused to that audience. And also in the very early part of the introduction, it is important for us to identify and state the gaps in knowledge or gaps in technology that we are going to fill with our research work. And usually we end it with some hypotheses or questions that we indicate will be answered by the time the reader gets to the conclusion. So I mentioned about this use of things like figures, graphs, tables. So when you take figures must be correctly labeled. Okay, so I have seen many figures where you have typical boxes which are labeled, and then there are arrows, but arrows are not labeled to indicate what the process, because a block is a activity, and if you go from one act to the other, what is the transition? So transition must be labeled. So these kind of things we tend to miss. So it is very important to have properly labeled figures. And also remember, nowadays most of the publications happen online. So you have now the luxury of using color to make your figures appealing. But at the same time, make sure if it is printed in black and white, grayscale, still it is readable and meaningful. But we should make use of the colorization capability now, because most papers are published as PDF. And especially when it is sent to the reviewers to review, it is sent as PDF. So if you have a well-presented paper, the chance of it being reviewed and given good ratings is also high. And then it comes to tables. Now tables, obviously they have to be properly labeled, your columns and your rows, and the content must be properly aligned to indicate the relationships. Sometimes there are relationships among values in a row, and it must be correctly aligned to make that clear. And also, if you have a table with different kind of information being presented in a single table, then grouping them within the table is also important. These actions make it for a better representation of your information in the research paper. And when it comes to graphs, it is very important that you properly label your axis. And one thing that I have always noted is very well written graph, very well written research papers will indicate in the body if a axis is logarithmic. So most of the time we have one axis in linear scale and another axis in log scale, and if we miss that scale of the axis, we might completely misinterpret the results. So we might think that this performance is linear, but it is actually exponential because one axis is logarithmic. So it is good if you can indicate that in the axis in small letters, not just by putting the values 10, 100, 1000, like that is also helpful, but it is also important to indicate that clearly. So this kind of labeling that you do to a graph is also helpful for the reader, as well as it improves the quality and impresses the reviewers. And so I would like to conclude my talk about writing a good research paper by talking about the language. So we have to write in good English, but that is not a one-shot achievement. So we first write, and then we have the ability to now use a lot of tools. There are online tools which are available to improve your writing. So you can even use Google tools to improve the writing skills, and then there are other tools like Grammarly, which are specifically designed to improve writing in particular domains like research papers. And you have to reread your paper multiple times and make the corrections, and then only you should ask somebody else to read it. And it's very important that you ask somebody else to read your paper, because it is our human nature that we tend to mentally correct some of the errors, common errors we make. So therefore we will not detect them. So it's important to get someone else to look at it and correct it. And referencing is also critical for a paper. I have seen many instances where research papers are written without referring to the two key types of prior work. The seminal work, that means the foundation work on which that area rests. So you have to indicate that you are knowledgeable about the foundations by referring to that in your, for example, introduction or in the literature review, as well as the state of the art, which you will mention either in the literature review or in your methodology or sometimes in your research results section. So they must be properly cited, and you must use the guideline given for referencing and citation. So these are two things. So citation is how you refer to prior work in the body of text you are writing. Okay, so if you take, for example, the IEEE, you just normally write a sentence referring to what someone else has done, and at the end of the sentence you can put a citation to that as a square bracketed number. In APA style, the citation is written in such a way that you read it as part of the sentence. So in IEEE, you don't read the citation as part of the sentence. So, so you might have a statement saying the original concepts of object orientation programming was developed by those who have worked on improving the software life cycle, on the software development life cycle, and then before the full stop you will have within brackets some number 29. So you don't read 29, but if you are writing in the APA style, then you would write it as the object-oriented programming concepts have been developed by some two names, and then within bracket a year, and then continue the statement. So in APA you read the reference as part of the sentence. So you have to write it in that manner so it is readable. Okay. Otherwise it is an incorrect way of citation. And then when it comes to referencing list, obviously the IEEE has to be numbered list because it's by the numbers that you have referred to it, and usually it is in the order of first citation. It is not in the alphabetical order, it is in the first citation, whereas the APA, it is in the alphabetical order of the first author's surname, and then after that name list you have the within brackets the year of publication. So you can use tools like EndNote, Mendeley to assist you in maintaining a reference database and use it for your research paper writing work. So I hope you had a bit of a introduction to this topic of how to write a good research paper. Thank you.